From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Saini Gray. North Korea has threatened to cancel the upcoming highly anticipated summit between U.S. President Donald Trump and leader Kim Jong-un. In a statement, North Korea said the move was due to, quote, provocative military disturbances with South Korea. The warning comes as North Korea's state news outlet KCNA reported North Korea has also suspended talks with South Korea because of a joint military drill conducted by South Korea and the United States. All of this threatens to upend progress made at the end of April, when Kim Jong-un crossed into South Korea for a historic summit with South Korean President Moon Jae-in. The U.S. State Department has announced it will continue to plan for the summit between President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un regardless.
We are operating under the idea and the notion that the president's meeting is going forward with Chairman Kim next month.
And if this meeting doesn't happen, will you still go forward?
That's a hypothetical. You know, look, this news just came out. I can't verify it just yet. It's very early on in the process, but we're planning ahead for our meetings.
The Kellogg company has announced it's closing operations in Venezuela. The company said in a statement Tuesday that it was prompted to cease operations as a result of the current economic and social deterioration in the country. Workers arriving at the Maracay offices were met with a notice taped to a glass door informing them that the company had been forced to close. President Nicolas Maduro responded, saying he's handing the company over to the people.
The company Kellogg's will continue producing now in the hands of the working class. And we will initiate the legal actions to request the red code of the owners and shareholders of the Kellogg's company so that they pay in the courts and pay in justice. They have to respect the laws of Venezuela.
Opposition candidate Henry Falcon responded to the closure as well. On Twitter, he said Kellogg's is just one of thousands of companies that have ceased operations because of the government, which has promised to fix the situation, but has not over the years. The chief of the Strategic Operational Command of the Armed Forces, Remigio Ceballos, announced that more than 300,000 military forces will be deployed around Venezuela from Tuesday. The Army personnel will oversee the security in every polling station in the country. The announcement came just after Ceballos met with the president of the CNE, members of the public ministry, and the political parties that are participating in the electoral race. Ceballos also said they will take legal action against those who try to sabotage the election day or disturb the public order. Now, Venezuela takes pride in having what the former U.S. President Jimmy Carter described as the best voting system in the world. More than 13 audits were carried out before, during, and after the election. Ian Bruce reports on the preparations for a transparent poll.
For the 6th time so far before Sunday's election, Venezuela's voting system is being put to the test. They call this one the zero-error audit, the most important step before they send these electronic voting machines to polling stations close to Caracas. It checks the complete chain of the process, from the digital identity checks and the vote itself, through the data transmission to the final computation of the results. It includes every detail, including what to do, for example, when a disabled voter is unable to mark their fingerprint.
We've already had 2 exceptional situations, when the voter is missing a finger and we need a code from the president of the voting station to authorize their vote. But we only have permission to allow 2 exceptional cases. If there's a 3rd case, we have to call the National Support Center and they have to give us the key.
There'll be 4 more audits before Sunday and several more on the day and after the election. The Venezuelan Electoral Authority, the CNE, has long taken pride in its voting system. It says it's the most thoroughly audited in the world and effectively fraud-proof. Now they've incorporated further guarantees in line with 2 agreements with the opposition.
We have been implementing faithfully every detail contained in both the Santo Domingo Accord and the later Caracas Agreement with the candidates.
They've already dispatched voting machines like these to Venezuela's more distant states. On Friday, 34,143 of them will be installed and ready to go. Ian Bruce, Telesur, Caracas.
And for more now on Venezuela, we go live to Caracas, our correspondent Ian Bruce. So Ian, we heard about the audit there. How are the other preparations going for Sunday's elections?
Yes, indeed, Soini. So while the audit proceeds apace, today the most important thing, as we mentioned before, was this installation of the security system for Sunday's vote. Venezuela, like almost all Latin American countries, calls in the army and the armed forces to provide security around its elections. And so a large number of troops, as we heard, are now, from today, being deployed to the 14,638 voting centers where all those voting machines will be up and running on Friday. Many of them are, of course, in schools and other public buildings of that sort. So that's now in place. At the event where that was initiated, where that was launched, the head of the CNE, of the Electoral Authority, Tibisay Lucena, said the CNE is now ready for Sunday's vote, that all the guarantees are in place. And she said that Venezuela doesn't need to take lessons from anybody in terms of democracy.
With just 2 days of campaigning to go, what has been happening, Ian?
So yes, as you say, it's the campaign also proceeds apace. The closing rallies and so forth will be on Thursday. Today, President Nicolas Maduro, he's just been in Anzoátegui. I was just seeing him on the screen behind me speaking in the eastern state of Anzoátegui. Earlier he was in Carabobo, where, as we heard, he made that important response to the closing of the Kellogg's factory, where he said that the action of the company had been completely illegal and it was now up to the workers to continue production themselves and to control the company. Earlier he was in Sharayavi, a big turnout there, much bigger, I must say, than we were in Sharayavi just a couple of days ago for the third place candidate, an event by Javier Bertucci, and today's event for Maduro was certainly a great deal larger than that one that we saw. The Henry Falcon has now finished his campaign in Caracas. He's moved down to the Colombian border to Táchira, where he's been today, and he'll be closing his campaign in Carabobo. And Javier Bertucci's supporters, well, they've been out. Most of them are evangelical Christians, of course, the core supporters. They've been holding caravans around the country. The themes are basically the same. The economy has been at the center of this campaign, with very different proposals from the different candidates on how to solve the economic difficulties that Venezuela faces. But I think those remarks by President Maduro about handing over the Kellogg's factory to the workers is sort of emblematic of the kind of proposals he's trying to promote, where he says he needs to win this election in order to draw on people's support and concentrate his people's energy, to use the people's contribution, as in the case of the Kellogg's workers, to overcome the difficulties that Venezuela faces, and indeed the economic blockade and sanctions and strangulation which the country has been suffering from.
Thank you so much for that update. We've been speaking to our correspondent in Caracas, Ian Bruce. We're going to take a short break now, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
That's why today we call on Maduro and his regime, suspend this sham election, hold real elections, give the people of Venezuela real choices, because the Venezuelan people deserve to live in democracy once again.
We hope Our friends in the EU will soon follow the United States, Canada, and many Latin American nations in sanctioning the Maduro regime. We need everybody involved.
We've already imposed strict financial sanctions on more than 50 current and former senior Venezuelan officials. We cut off the so-called petro from the United States financial system.
¿Quién elige al presidente de Venezuela? Donald Trump, Mike Pence, Julio Borges. El presidente de Venezuela lo elige el soberano pueblo de Venezuela en voto directo secreto.
Former Argentinian President Cristina Fernandez has been accused of alleged money laundering and illicit association for operations that one of her companies carried out with public works awardees. A federal judge also prosecuted her children, Maximo and Florencia Kirchner, co-owners of the company Hotesir, for managing a hotel in which some businessmen allegedly paid bribes by hiring rooms. This is the fifth judicial process the former Argentinian president has had to face. Fernandez says she's suffering a political persecution boosted by the current president, Mauricio Macri. And Argentinians marched again on Tuesday against a deal the government made last week with the International Monetary Fund, or IMF. Protesters waved signs as they marched towards the central bank. Protest leader Daniel Fernandez handed out food, saying the distribution of food was to make a visual statement. The Argentine currency dropped 6.6% to a record low on Monday. The continued weakness is what prompted the government to request a high access standby arrangement from the International Monetary Fund.
We want to show, in particular, who are the families that are affected by these measures, and also point out that what they are doing is a tragedy. While today there are guaranteed billions of dollars of profit to certain sectors, there are families who do not have anything to eat. That is the reality. It is not neutral. Here some take profits and others are left with an increasingly difficult social situation.
Also in Argentina, the dollar price continues to increase. It has already reached the 25.52 pesos per dollar. The Argentinian central bank tried to stop the peso's devaluation by selling another $5 million, but the move did not succeed. Analysts warn that the Argentinian government is walking on thin ice, while the chief of the cabinet of ministers, Marcos Peña, insists the country is experiencing economic growth. The Minister of Finance, Nicolas de Jovne, acknowledged that the situation will incur into inflation increase. U.S. President Donald Trump says he will support Argentina. Our correspondent, Edgardo Esteban, has more from Buenos Aires.
United States President Donald Trump told his Argentinian counterpart, Mauricio Macri, that he will support his government during this hard economic crisis that is hitting the country. The situation is going out of control for Macri, as the dollar continues to rise against the Argentinian peso. It's important to notice that people are calling this day Black Tuesday, as bonds that correspond to more than 600 billion pesos, around $30 billion, are issued by the government. People are expecting clear answers regarding these bonds, and they demand a solution to this deep crisis. Macri's administration has sought help from international financial institutions like the IMF, as Argentina will host the G20 meeting by the end of the year. Due to this meeting, Argentina wants to show the leaders of powerful countries that it is economically strong and stable.
In Colombia, the National Liberation Army, or ELN, announced a temporary ceasefire to facilitate the presidential elections. The announcement came after peace talks with the Colombian government were renewed in Havana last Thursday. Our correspondent in Bogota, Fernandez, brings us all the details.
The National Liberation Army announced a ceasefire from the 25th of May until Tuesday, May 29th. What they say, the National Liberation Army, is that they want best conditions for the presidential elections that will take place on Sunday, May 27th. We should recall that this announcement was made in Havana, Cuba, after the peace talks were moved from Quito, after Ecuadorian President Lenín Moreno withdrew his country as the host for the dialogue. The last ceasefire between the National Liberation Army and the Colombian government lasted from the 1st of October to January 12th this year. What the guerrilla expect, as well as some social movements, is that some of the core mistakes are not repeated again. They want the Colombian government to respect the ceasefire, even though it was announced as an unilateral and temporary one. According to Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos, great advances have been made since the fifth cycle of dialogue was renewed in Cuba in order to achieve a permanent ceasefire agreed by both sides.
Thanks, Paolo, for that report. Another journalist has been killed in Mexico, this time in the state of Jalisco. Juan Carlos Huerta was shot dead on Tuesday morning as he left home. The state governor, Arturo Núñez, said the killing was not a robbery, calling it an execution, linked to his work as a journalist. Huerta hosted a television program and was a director of a radio station in Tabasco. He is the fourth Mexican journalist killed this year. And the candidate for Senate for the Morena Party in Mexico, Nestora Salgado, demanded that the authorities guarantee security for all candidates ahead of the election. During a press conference, Salgado said that she has already received 4 death threats via telephone, trying to deter her from returning to her state of Guerrero, along with the other candidates from Morena, and that's the party that's leading in the polls. She has asked the police to ensure their safety. More than 90 candidates have been killed during the campaign, which ends in less than 2 months.
It's unbelievable that all these candidates are dying. This election environment is really shameful for our country. It needs to stop. We need to be protected from threats. We need to demand that they won't silence us, because that is what they're trying to achieve. Despite all the threats, we are back in Guerrero, asking for no more bloodsheds in the country. It's not fair for our people.
And Morena's candidate for President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has a 20-point lead ahead of his nearest rival in the race. A recent poll by El Financiero shows the former Mexico City mayor with 46% of the support of voters. Ricardo Anaya from the right-left coalition stands at 26%. The third place is being held by the PRI, which is the ruling party, with Jose Antonio Meade with a 4-point decline for a 20% support of the electorate. The election is scheduled for July 1st. In Panama, the construction strike will continue for now after the union rejected the latest offer. Hugo Vera has more from Panama City.
We're now in the center of Panama, in Porras Park, where moments ago a meeting of the Construction Workers Union took place. The executive voted to continue the strike that started on April 18th. The union didn't accept the offer made by the Panamanian Chamber of Construction. The chamber offered an increase of 4 to 5 cents per hour for the next 4 years. But the union wants an increase of 10.9% of the total income of the construction sector over the past 4 years, which was $36 billion, of which $30 billion was profit. They will continue negotiating with the Labor Ministry until they feel comfortable with the new offer, instead of the pennies that they are asked to accept. This is all for now. We'll keep you posted.
The Nicaraguan government authorized the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights to send a delegation to check the situation of human rights in their country. The move comes after Nicaragua was hit by a wave of violent protests in the last few weeks. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dennis Moncada, sent a letter allowing the body of the Organization of American States to visit the country. He also said authorities are willing to collaborate. The National Dialogue for Peace between different social sectors and Daniel Ortega's government will also begin today. The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Rowley, has welcomed a new economic development strategy with China. Dr. Rowley said his country will actively take part in a new initiative proposed by the Chinese President Xi Jinping, and which will expand bilateral trade, investment, and people-to-people exchanges. Dr. Rowley is in China for an official visit at the invitation of the Chinese Premier, Li. The Vice-Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Sir Hilary Beckles, has said that one can read Windrush as a morality tale. He was speaking on the mass deportations of Windrush descendants from the UK to the Caribbean, but he said it should be better seen as a story about the future of black people in the Caribbean.
Where next will they want us to labor? Where will be the next place where they will take us? Why do we not focus on building our economies and societies? And this is what the conversation is. If we have more economic growth in this region, will our people be exposed to this circuit of unskilled labor? So it comes back to us. It comes back to us. The ball is back with us, that we do in fact need to put all hands on deck to get our economies to function at a higher level of development. That is the cure. It's the only cure to all of this.
We're going to take a short break now, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. The United Nations Security Council held a special meeting to discuss the extreme violence against Palestinian protesters on Monday. It was called by Kuwait in response to a request from Palestine. Earlier, the Palestinian ambassador to the UN, Riyad Mansour, called the killings a war crime and said it was a tragic day for Palestinians. Mansour confirmed that at least 8 children under the age of 16 were among those killed. He believes on the basis of human rights violation, an inquiry by the Security Council is urgently needed. The United Nations Human Rights Office condemned what they called appalling deadly violence by Israeli security forces. UN Human Rights High Commissioner Rupert Colville said Israel has a right to defend its border according to international law, but lethal force must only be used as a last resort and was not justified by Palestinians approaching the Gaza fence. He has called for an independent investigation to look into Monday's events as war crimes. They're extremely worried about further bloodshed as Palestinians plan more protests to mark the Nakba. And the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, has sparked controversy by praising Israel for its, quote, restraint. Haley repeated the White House's line of blaming Hamas for the killings. Hamas has requested the protests at the border be discontinued.
I asked my colleagues here in the Security Council, who among us would accept this type of activity on your border? No one would. No country in this chamber would act with more restraint than Israel has.
And our correspondent Noor Harazin has more from the Gaza Strip.
Today is a very sad day here in the Gaza Strip and for the Palestinian people. Here there is a strike, the shops, the universities, the schools are closed, the streets are almost empty. All of this happened after yesterday when 60 Palestinians were killed during the protests between the Palestinians and Israelis on the border fence between Gaza and Israel. As I said, the number of people killed in Gaza yesterday is up to 60 people and more than 2,500 injuries were reported. This day, many Palestinians are joining the funerals of those who died yesterday. One of the funerals was for an 8-month-old baby girl who died this morning after she inhaled tear gas yesterday during the protests of the Great March of Return. Today marks the 70th anniversary of the Palestinian Nakba, and tomorrow is the first day of the Islamic holy month of Ramadan. However, the Palestinian people cannot celebrate this happy month. They are very sad after what happened after the massacre of yesterday.
We thank you, Noor, for that report, and we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at tellustv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Soini Gray. Thank you so much for watching.